welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about how to overcome CPTSD, how to identify your emotional triggers, and how to facilitate the process to identification of your triggers and then fully processing them so that in the present moment you are not reacting to things that are provoking an emotional response, and instead you can stay grounded in your energy and respond in a way that's actually beneficial for you and then for everyone else that's involved. So just a little story. When I first found out or had been labeled with CPTSD, I was super overwhelmed. I had no idea how I was going to deal with all of this, but at the same time, I was so relieved because it really explained why I was acting in certain ways that I had previously never been able to explain in terms of my mental health and a lot of the physical symptoms that I was experiencing. I was like, this makes sense. But prior to that, I had no idea that the things that have happened in your past that were unprocessed had any sort of relation to even the physical symptoms that you're experiencing or the ways that you're reacting now, your personality or what you perceive your personality to be now. Like, I just wasn't aware that it was all due to things that have happened in your past that you've made assumptions about and that were never actually processed. And then now in the present day, things in the external world were happening that were triggering those wounds, and then you were reacting as you were when you were like 5 years old or, you know, however old these things happened. As overwhelmed as I was like, thank goodness. And I was relieved because I had finally found the root and I had finally understood, you know, at least a process of how to do it. With PTSD, it's one event that you keep flashbacking to, an emotional flashbacking to, but in my case, it was an entire childhood up until I was 20, like up until the time that I realized there was trauma happening. And so I was overwhelmed, like, where do I start? Like, how do I even heal from this? The other thoughts that were going through my mind were, is my brain permanently messed up? Like, am I always going to have a messed up brain? Like, am I messed up? Candidly. And then the emotions I was feeling was very fearful, so scared. I was paranoid. I was sad. I was feeling grief. I was feeling anger. I was feeling confusion. The first thing that I did in my healing journey was really focused down on CPTSD and identifying my emotional triggers, identifying the root of where all of these things came from. And it was honestly just starting. If you are in the same situation, or if you are looking back and saying there's so much though, like my entire life was emotional abuse or physical abuse or whatever it was, then my advice for you would just be to start. And once you start, then it starts clearing. That builds momentum over time, and eventually you'll get to a place where it gets better. But you do have to just start somewhere, and then those times will compound on one another. And so I'm going to share with you the process that I did at the very beginning of how to identify the emotional triggers, how to figure out the root and patterns, and then how to start shifting those and rebalancing your nervous system. When this all came to surface, I was really dysregulated. I was scared to go outside. I was scared to do anything. I thought people were going to come kill me. I was convinced of that. The feeling that I had was I'm not safe. So that was the baseline assumption. And then I would be having panic attacks whenever I had to leave somewhere. I would just be acting in really irrational ways. Another really important thing here is to know that your body can be responding in an irrational way. In terms of, it could be panicking when you're in your house, right? And you could be having a panic attack in your house. Objectively, nothing's actually wrong, but your body is responding in that way. Know that there's a part of you that understands that objectively that you're safe, even when the 95% of you is like, I'm unsafe, I'm freaking out, all of these different things. Know that there's 5% of you that knows the truth and knows objectively that you're actually safe. And so if you can disidentify a little bit with the feeling of you freaking out that like X, Y, and Z are happening, if you can just disidentify with that bit of you and allow yourself to process it and feel it. Like, do not suppress it. If you suppress it, it's just going to get buried down and repressed, which is why, in my case specifically, I had repressed it for so long that it just exploded out, and it was just this totally irrational way of handling all of these different things, but it was because I suppressed it. So don't suppress the emotion. Don't suppress anything that's coming up, because it's coming up to be processed, and it's coming up because you have the capability to process it. But what I mean is that allow your feeling to go, don't suppress it, don't stop it. It's just energy moving through your body. But also know that there's the 5% of you that knows that everything's okay, that knows that you're safe. I think that distinction really, really helped. And I'll do another video because it was really interesting. My dog actually really, really helped me understand this thing about the human mind and the difference that we have between, reacting in an animalistic way and reacting in a way that we have the capabilities to with the human mind. And so that was just a really interesting thing. I think I wrote a blog on that too. But yeah, it's knowing that there's a part of you that knows the truth, that you're okay, that everything's okay, but then it's also allowing your body to feel that and not getting lost in that and identifying with that unsafe feeling. Because once you identify with the unsafe feeling, that's when you start to play into that energy, and then it just expands and evolves, because whatever you focus on and whatever you're identifying with just builds momentum, and that creates that. So your thoughts are going to be influencing your emotions are going to be back influencing your thoughts, and it's going to be this cycle where you get completely lost. So one of the big things is disidentifying with that part of you, understanding that that's a normal process and allowing it to happen, but knowing that that's actually not you, and that you have the awareness that can just observe what's going on, but not getting lost in it. So that's huge. That was really, really big. Okay, voila. Oh no, I don't know if this is going to be able to see, if you're going to be able to see this. Okay, so this is the step process that I used. Okay, so the first step, I don't even know if you can see this. So the first step that I used was to pay attention to your body and to pay attention to the feelings. And so it's basically awareness. So anytime that you can feel yourself in a, I want to say lower vibration, but you can feel that your energy has shifted. You can feel that you are feeling anxious is just a label that you could use over you not feeling comfortable. It could be angry. It could be you're reacting, but it's in that moment to start becoming aware of when your emotions have shifted. So awareness is 90% of the thing, right? So just become aware. Okay, something happened and I'm not feeling like I'm thriving, or I'm not feeling like I'm safe, or I'm not feeling how I desire to feel. And so in those moments, it's just becoming aware. Okay, something shifted within me and something is not feeling comfortable. Once you're there, you go to step 2. So you notice what the cause was of the trigger. And so this can be something internal and external. So internal and external. What I mean by external things are like people and places. So things that have happened. So say that you were walking down the street and you saw a person in a red sweater, and all of a sudden you just, started kind of freaking out. You were just like a little bit stressed, and you noticed that your emotions changed and that you got triggered, essentially. So it would be paying attention to that. Okay, I saw a guy in a red sweater. Cool. Okay, so you write that down and you log that. It could also be places. So say you're walking by some place and then you notice that your energy changes. And so it's just paying attention. It's trying to put the correlation to something that happened in the external world. I'll just give you an example from my life. I was really anxious every time that I had to take my dog out for a walk. Every time that I had to go out of my house, I was not good. Like I didn't want to do it. And I was just, I wanted to stay in my house. And so basically what I did was I was like, okay, so I have to go on the elevator. So one, I noticed that I'm feeling uncomfortable. So what is it about the elevator? We'll get to that in step 3. And then the internal, so your internal thoughts. So you could literally just be sitting there, and I'm sure that you've had this, and then you start to feel anxious, or you start to feel uncomfortable, you start to feel triggered. What that is that it's either a program within your subconscious mind that is running unconsciously, that's impacting the expression, and it's manifesting through your body essentially. Or it could be thoughts that you're thinking that are putting you into a certain state. So it's paying attention to the thoughts that you're having. Your thoughts influence your feelings influence your thoughts, and then you go in this cycle, right? And it just feeds off of one another. So you're in a negative loop, essentially confirming what you are saying to yourself and then feeling those things, and it's just getting amplified. Know that things always start in the thought form, they go to the emotion and they're manifested through the body. And so once you can pay attention and start to analyze what thought was I thinking, or what thought did I have in that moment that made me feel a certain feeling. I found initially at the beginning it was kind of difficult to get straight into the thought. And so it's a lot easier to notice when you're feeling that. Once you're feeling something, once you're feeling anxious, once you're feeling like panicked, it's easier to work the other way. But just know that it goes from thought to feeling to going through your body. So step 3, after you have paid attention to your feelings, after you've noticed what the cause is, so whether it's internal or external, you go to what did that hit within me, right? Because it's nothing that actually happens on the outside that's triggering you, right? Everything is neutral, everything's pretty objective. It's hitting something within you that's causing you to react in a certain way. So it's hitting something in you that you haven't processed, or that's causing you to flash back into a certain moment of time that you haven't allowed that to be processed within your psyche. And then that's showing up in the present moment. It's trying to figure out, what did that hit within me that needs to be healed? Or what is it within me that's making me react in this certain way? Basically, the way that I did this was simply just asking my latent awareness and surrendering into the feeling and surrendering into the assumption that I had all of the answers. So I'd start to feel myself in a certain way. I would notice what happened on the external and start to notice this and notice patterns that were coming up. And then I would ask myself, what is this stemming from? Like, what's the root of this? And then I would kind of stay quiet. And this has all happened. You could do it in the moment. It's a little bit hard in the moment at the beginning, but you can also go back and do it too. But if you can get into the moment and kind of surrender and kind of relax and understand that you're doing this process, you can start to actually go back to those moments and, remember them. I'll give you an example of this point. So I used to be really, really afraid of speaking in front of people and having someone hear me. And I never wanted to admit that. My conscious mind was like, no, you can do it, you can do it. But like everything in me was wanting not to and was freaking out. I'd be drinking in the bathroom before I had to present in university. I would be buying CBD oil and like downing it because I was like, I don't know. And then what would happen was I would know what I'm gonna say, and then I would go in front of people, and then I would just completely blank. Like I would freeze. I would have no idea what I was saying, like no idea. And also be breaking out in hives. Like I used to wear turtlenecks because my whole neck would break out in hives because I was just freaking out. And it would also impact me for the week before. I would just be like, so stressed. My cortisol would be up. I'd be freaking out knowing that I had to do this presentation. If there was a presentation in one of my classes and then there was another course that didn't have to do a presentation, I would literally switch the course even though I wanted to learn what was in that course because I did not want to do the presentation. I was just completely controlled by my emotions on that. What I did, this one was like a really big one for me, was I would start to feel that feeling of I'm really scared to go and do this. And then I'd say, where is this coming from? Like, what was the first time that I felt this from? Like, what's the root of this? What actually came to me was this moment in my past where I had been hit before I had gone to school and I peed my pants. And so what happened was I went to school and I told my teacher, but my parents were friends with like the teacher, and so they knew like something was off, and I think apparently they went and told my mom. But I had pee pants, and then I got asked to go, it was a carol sing, this was in grade 2, and I got asked to go and shake a tambourine, or I don't know if you guys remember those like little shaker things in front of the school. So I remember being traumatized from this, peeing my pants and being so embarrassed, going to tell someone and then basically saying, no, like it's fine, and then having to go in front of the school and shake a little tambourine in front of everyone. And honestly, that scarred me. And so when I asked myself, and I had no recollection of that memory, but when I had asked myself, where's this stemming from? That was a huge memory that came up that was like, I'm petrified of being in front of people. And so it was that assumption that I had made when I was like in grade 2 of, this is horrible, this is so bad, I never want to be in front of people again. And so when this would come up in my present day, I would be reacting the way that I was freaking out when I was in grade 2. And so that's kind of like the way that these cycles work. So basically I would trace it back to a moment in time that there was the root of this. And you can do this by just relaxing and asking your latent awareness, and then just kind of being available for the answer. And it's easier once you can get to the root one. Of course, there's going to be different moments in time that have contributed to that, but if you can get the root one and kind of just rip it out and process it, then it will be a lot easier. Okay. Step 4. So what is objectively true about this, right? This one's kind of bringing yourself back into the present moment. Step 4. Back into the present moment and being mindful and understanding that, okay, my body can be reacting in this way. I could be freaking out. My body could be shaking. My body could be vibrating. I could be panicking. I could be really, really uncomfortable. But what's actually objectively true, and bringing yourself back to what's real, not the story of what happened in the past, or not the story that you're making up in the present moment that I'm not safe, I'm freaking out, like, everyone's gonna laugh at me, I feel humiliated, I feel embarrassed, like all of that. It's being like, okay, what is objectively true? Objectively, I am standing in front of people. I am in a really safe location and area, and these people are kind-hearted people. No one can hurt me. And then kind of just listing all the objective truths. When you're in like a fight with your partner and you're kind of reacting back to a state that you were in the past, or reacting back to something that triggered you, is asking yourself, okay, what's objectively true? The story that I'm making up is that they don't love me, is that they hate being around me, is that I'm a bad girlfriend, is that they're angry with me, is that they're boring, all of these different things. Like, that's the story. Okay, we move on to the next step. What can I do to process this? So there's a zillion different ways that you can do to process this. Sometimes it's just tuning in and allowing yourself to feel that, and having the awareness, because you've went through all of these steps, that it's actually nothing that happened on the external. It's something that's being triggered, and the meaning and the stories and the emotions that are coming up from something internal. When you have that feeling, I'm just going to give the example of you being angry, or someone being angry when their partner came home and say they didn't talk to them or whatever. Okay, well, how can I actually process this by myself? Okay, so I can go and I can feel into it, and I can like tell my inner child, or I can tell that part of me that you're loved, everything's okay. The person that can give me the most love is me. Or it could be, I'm gonna go meditate, I'm gonna go do a breath, I'm gonna go journal, I'm gonna go do some yoga, I'm gonna go take a walk, I'm gonna go work out. It's all of these different things that you can do so that you're not reacting to what has previously triggered you. And instead you're responding and you're processing that in the present, so that each time that happens, you won't be triggered again, right? And you won't have those stories. Then the next time that happens, you can just carry on as your normal self, and it won't be hitting anything within you that you haven't healed, an assumption that you have about yourself, because yeah, it's just not present anymore. You've processed it and you've healed it. This was the first thing that I really focused on, was start to identify my triggers. And it really helped with understanding who I am and why I was doing certain things and why I was acting in certain behaviors. And then the more that you do this, the less unconscious you'll become, and you'll become less reactive to anything that's going on, and you'll just start to be responding, and it won't hit anything, and you'll just be like, yeah, it just doesn't bother me anymore. And then when it does, less frequently, you can be like, oh geez, like I'm being triggered right now. What is it within myself that this person is showing me? Because another like really cool thing is that the relationships that you have in your life are the biggest opportunities for you to learn about yourself, because the external world is a reflection to you. The relationships that you have are literally reflections to you of what you need to become aware of within yourself. So they're really cool. Instead of blaming other people or saying they did this, it's actually saying, okay, they're doing this, but it's hitting something within myself. Also, just a point too is that obviously if you're in a unhealthy relationship, then it's one, becoming aware of that. And once you do this process, you can kind of see the situation more objectively and be like, do I actually want to stay? Do I not want to stay? Kind of thing. So it's not completely blaming and internalizing everything, thinking that it's your fault. Like, don't do that. I also did that for a bit too. It's understanding that some of the things that are happening are objectively just neutral. Everything that's happening is neutral. It's the meaning that you're giving to it. And a lot of that meaning comes from assumptions that you had and that were formed in your past that are just being triggered. And then you're responding like you were when you were triggered at whatever age that you were triggered at. And so this is just really, really good for self-awareness. It will make your relationships better. It will make your relationship with yourself a lot better. And yeah, I hope this was helpful, and I love you all.